Hello and welcome to the 5th Impact Youth devotional video as we walk through Genesis. So glad I changed my shirt for you today as we pick up in Genesis chapter 12. And the reading for today is going to be Genesis chapter 12 through Genesis chapter 14, where we're introduced to the main character who is essentially going to be his family is the entire story of the Old Testament as we go through the remainder of the book of Genesis. It's going to be about Abraham and his sons Isaac and Ishmael, and then Isaac's son Jacob and Esau and all of Jacob's sons. So that's the family line that is going to be the entire remainder of the book of Genesis. But where we start in chapter 12 is I want you to notice first the promise that God makes to Abram. At the time his name was Abram. He becomes Abraham later. God will change his name. You'll get there. But notice that Abraham is only 75 years old at the time of this promise. And also notice that God doesn't promise just a big family, but he also promises a specific place that his family is going to settle, the land that they're going to be in. And then after we have this promise, we have another great story I have to call out, where Abram goes into Egypt. He tells a few lies, and he ends up walking out of Egypt with all these riches and supplies given to him by the king of Egypt. If you end up reading into Exodus, which I think we might do after reading through Genesis, you're going to find that this is very interesting, that this is a little snippet of something that happens to all the Israel people later in the book of Exodus. We then get to Abram and his nephew Lot, and they have to separate because they have so many sheep and cattle that they need more land. They can't be together. And then in chapter 14, we have this story of Lot being captured and Abram going and rescuing his nephew Lot. But what's really intriguing here, and you don't pick it up as you just read through chapter 14, but the book of Hebrews calls a ton of attention to this guy who's the king of Salem, and his name is Melchizedek. And what's so fascinating is he's the only character in the entire Bible who is both a king and it says he's a priest of the Lord Most High. So he's a king and he's a priest. His name Melchizedek means king of righteousness, and the name Salem, where he's king of, really means peace. So he's the king of righteousness and he's the king of peace. He's a king and he's a priest of the Lord Most High. And in the book of Hebrews, the author there really draws a connection saying this character Melchizedek is a foreshadowing of Jesus, who's going to come and be the king of righteousness, the king of peace. He's both king of the entire world, but he's also a priest to the Lord Most High, bringing the sacrifice, his own life, for our sin. So there's all these connections here that we see. As you read through chapters 12, 13, and 14, I hope that you read it. If you're totally lost, please ask me. There's a ton of meat here for you to chew on. Keep going. I promise it's going to be worth the journey.